米スポーツ界に精通し、日本のファンにもおなじみのディラン・ヘルナンデス記者とジャック・ハリス記者が自身たちのポッドキャスト番組カリフォルニアポストスポーツで大谷選手と山本由伸投手について語りました。番組ではまず二刀流完全体で臨む大谷選手のコンディションや仕上がり具合を現地取材ならではの視点で分析。さらに山本投手が取り組むトレーニングメニューやそれを支える矢田先生のメソッドにも話題が及びました。そして中でも白熱したのが大谷選手は WBC で本当に登板しないのかというテーマで、2人は様々な角度から意見がぶつかり合い大いに盛り上がりを見せました。とても見どころあるその模様を日本語字幕付きでご紹介しますので、ぜひ最後までご覧ください。
So I think at the other end of the spectrum, though, like Shohei Ohtani's progression has kind of been interesting to watch. He is no longer here. He departed today to go to Japan to join Team Japan for the World Baseball Classic. Others will be leaving camp later this week. Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Edwin Diaz and Hae-Sung Kim and Will Smith for Team USA. But with Ohtani, how do you feel? There's been a lot of talk in the first couple weeks here in Glendale about the way he looks coming off a fully healthy offseason, the fact that he's already faced hitters twice, that even though the WBC is going to create some complications for his pitching ramp up, he'll be ready to start the season. It's hard to be more impressed with anything Ohtani does after the last couple years, but at least the way he's come in now, do you feel a little bit more optimistic about how the return to two-way play is going to go?
Yeah.
Kind of the place he's going to be in physically, even coming back from the WBC in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, he's, his body just seems kind of, again, not to go back to the eye test again, but the body just kind of seems like a little bit better proportioned. Obviously last year, people kind of forget, right, in the 24 World Series, he had the separated shoulder, had like a procedure there that probably slowed some things down a little bit. Physically, obviously he looks great just by the fact that he's hit 99 already, right? I do think, right, his former manager, Hideki Kuriyama from the Nippon Ham Fighters, who managed him in the last WBC, has been around camp here, working as a TV broadcaster. And, he always sets a pretty high bar for Ohtani. He kind of mentioned how, I don't know, if his pitching form is all that great right now. It sounds like, I guess Ohtani to generate more velocity kind of did this thing where I guess he's doing this thing, at least in the last time he pitched through here, he kind of, right, when he threw the live the other day, or yesterday?
Yeah, yesterday.
Yeah.
They all blend together.
Yeah, he's kind of doing this thing, I guess, where he's tilting back a little bit more to kind of generate more velocity, right, more power or whatever, which I guess, kind of had an effect on the command of his slider.
Man, that's a very analytical breakdown of a live BP session.
But that said, again, I think he's going to kind of figure things out. Right? There's no reason to think that he won't. Obviously he looks great. He looks so good right now, frankly, right, that we're thinking, might he pitch? It's a weird thing, right? Because it's and I guess this is what I do kind of like about Ohtani, right?
Might he pitch in the WBC?
In the WBC,
yes.
Is that like he's becoming more, I think, of an entertainer in a way, right? In terms of, right, in the first Cactus League game that he played in, Hae-Sung Kim, lines the ball foul that kind of zipped by him, and Ohtani just kind of like mocking, playfully glared at him, and the crowd laughed, and when he came out of the game.
Did you laugh? Was it funny enough to get a chuckle out of you in the press box?
I had my head down. I was right.
Okay.
And then later, when he left, right? He just grabbed his stuff and basically sprinted into the outfield, which is the type of thing you don't really get to see too much, And I think even here, right? I still think that more likely than not that he's not going to pitch, right? There is in the WBC, right? Because I think. That said,
I'm glad it's only more likely than not. Because, again, the Dodgers have been pretty clear, he's not going to pitch. Andrew Friedman, you asked him, would they sue Team Japan if he did try to pitch? He said he wasn't worried about that. But, Ohtani, when he was asked about this the other day, said, kind of joked, if it's the ninth inning, or he was asked if it's the ninth inning of the game and you can close it out, would you be tempted? And he said, it's tough to say. Maybe if Trout stepped in there, he didn't really say like no,
right.
But it seems unlikely.
And again, you could read that both ways, right? The one way to read it is, because he has not himself actually said, I am not going to pitch. Right, the closest he's come to it when he asked
reading the fine print.
Well, that's how he talks, right? I mean, we were, I was, recorded actually last night a podcast, my Japanese podcast 50/50. If you speak Japanese, please watch that. But we were talking last night about how it almost felt like a language test, right? Like, what's the subject? What is the because the closest he's come, right, when he got asked, how have you come to accept this decision that you're not going to pitch? He didn't say he accepted the decision. What he said was he accepted the feeling that it would be difficult for him to pitch after, basically having only pitched half a season last year. And so again, there's one way to read it is that like, hey, he's actually kind of creating this opening for him to pitch. The other way to look at it though, right, when, as Vassay was asking Ohtani that question about, might you be tempted to pitch in a certain situation? You did see kind of this little smile kind of start to form on Ohtani's face. And I think, right, this is going to be like a potentially kind of a fun story maybe, right? Mm-hmm. And I think he's kind of finding humor in, and that's what kind of makes sports fun, I think.
Well,
right?
He won't, he is.
Yeah, right? I mean, not everybody has the luxury of being able to turn a sporting competition into like a show, right? Because you're just most guys are just treading water, just trying to kind of survive. But every now and then, right, every generation has a couple of guys that the game is, or whatever it is easy enough for them that they can turn the thing into kind of a spectacle. And it kind of seems like he's really kind of embracing more of this entertainer role.
Shohei Ohtani, generational entertainer, right?
Yeah,
it's a new one.
It's been fun.
Yeah. But with him, also related to the WBC, like, do you think this is a good or a bad thing that he's pitching in this tournament? Obviously, it's very important. I think in some ways, some players look at it as a benefit as they ramp up for a season. In his case, he's coming off the workload he had last year, just the general concerns over how many innings he can pitch. But with where he's at physically, how do you look at what this tournament can do for him and how he'll be able to manage the added innings he's going to have when he rejoins the Dodgers and gets into the regular season?
Well, this is where I kind of want to give Dave Roberts some credit, right? I mean, he was kind of explaining to us why he was kind of okay with it. And I think really kind of the bottom line there, right? He didn't exactly phrase it like this, but I think if you kind of sift through everything, what he was really trying to say is he's a competitor and you can't stop a competitor from competing, right? So I think it's just kind of going to happen. Now, I do think, I think I said this before, this is going to be kind of a test of sorts for Osamu Yada, right? His longtime trainer and kind of...
Yada sensei to the Twitter crowd.
Yeah, and, I spoke to him the other day and he kind of talked about like, look, it's not like we're doing things to kind of prepare for like this one particular event, right? We've been doing this because he, I think, Yamamoto started working out with him when he was 19 years old, right? So they've been together for a while now. And he said, that basically he kind of compared it to kind of the seasons of the year, that, in December and January, evidently, like they push Yamamoto to the point of complete exhaustion, right? And he says, look, like whatever, as bad as this year might be, those 2 months were worse than anything he's going to encounter. Mm-hmm. And he even kind of talked about how, right, this is no different than like kind of planting a seed and then having the things sprout in the spring.
It's just an unbelievable quote.
And then, right, and then becoming like a flower, and then later the fruit,
And the fall, the fruit.
The fruit, yeah. And, he was like, look, like this is why, like, he kind of talked about last year, how he struggled in May a bit, right? And it's like, of course, he's not going to feel great at that point in the season. He pushed himself like almost to death in the off season, right? And he's going through kind of this like cycle. And so, the way Yada Sensei kind of explained it was, like to the outside, people might not, right? They might view this as kind of like, with a lot of uncertainty, but we kind of know the way his body goes, the way the cycle is. What was kind of interesting was he said that, that the weight gain was not like deliberate. Basically that he just kind of did the things that he normally did and he just kind of naturally just got bigger, And it's kind of a funny quote that he gave was about how he compared Yamamoto to kind of like the dominant monkey, like in a particular environment, you know, and he goes like, oh, you know, like as soon as you become the boss, like those guys just get bigger all of a sudden, you know. So,
yeah, I was not familiar with the zoology of.
Well, Japan has a lot of
monkeys,
monkeys, right? There are a lot of, you know, so yeah. So you know, I think it's one of those things where I think you kind of have. I mean, look, they've obviously invested a lot in Yamamoto. They trusted, right, Yamamoto, and by extension, Yada Sensei, enough to where they were willing to call him out in Game 7 of the World Series on 0 days rest to pitch like the final 2 2/3 innings, right? And I think at this point, it's kind of might as well just kind of like, right, see how far this thing can go, you know? What is interesting, I don't know if you noticed this, Mookie Betts, I guess, has started working with, he's going to work with Yada Sensei.
He's done some things with him in the past couple of years, just kind of like out of curiosity. But yeah, I mean, when you look at Yamamoto and what he was able to handle last year, the way he's come into camp looking this year, the fact that there's this much confidence that he'll be able to handle all this, like how could you not kind of be like, all right, let me do some, handstands and javelin throws and push-ups and some other non-traditional body weight exercises, right? He doesn't even lift weights, Yamamoto. It's interesting. And all right, we'll finish here. Someone we haven't really seen a ton, or who's kind of just blended into the scene here at camp, is Kyle Tucker. He did play yesterday in his first game, joked that his goal this spring is to top his hit total of 1 from last spring. But hey, a joke from Kyle Tucker, you know, it's still kind of in that getting to know phase, but it's been interesting to see, again, a guy who commanded so much attention this offseason has kind of showed up here and just blended in. Even yesterday in Peoria when he got his first start, I think that the cheers for Miguel Rojas and Will Smith and even Will Klein might have been bigger, but you know, I think that was part of the appeal, right? For him coming here is not having to be the guy, and so far has at least seemed to start carving out what his place on this team will be on and off the field.
Yeah, any team where Shohei Ohtani is realistically, right, everybody else kind of
where you have a generational entertainer and player like Ohtani.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just remember, right, his first spring here. I remember, right, everybody was watching Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman take batting practice, and then Ohtani goes to hit on the other field, and immediately the entire crowd there stampeded over to the Ohtani field, right? You know, and then I do think these championships these last 2 years has now kind of brought those other guys kind of back a little bit. And so, yeah, Tucker's kind of even behind that. You know, I think, you know, whenever Ohtani's on the move, you can hear it, right? you don't even have to see it, right? You can hear it. Tucker's moving around in relative silence right now, right? I mean, you know, the other day he was going out, right? He walked out with Will Smith and Freddie Freeman, and people were yelling for Freddie and a little bit for Will Smith, and he was just there.
Someone yelled at him. He was handsome, though. That was
afterwards.
Yes, the one shout out we've heard. All right. This is I think the longest you've been in a spring camp in what, 10 years consecutively?
At least,
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Are you surviving?
I mean, I'm just kind of, you know, it's just a constant worrying about what am I going to write tomorrow, right? So
welcome back to
the cartridge might be empty right now. So, you know, if there's anything you want to read about,
let me know, because I'm out of
know.
ideas. All right. Well, it's good. This will be a surprise for people who go online to CaliforniaPost.com. Oh, what did Dylan pull out of his back pocket today? But no, we have a lot of coverage online. I will be here for the duration of spring. You'll eventually be going on your own WBC departure. To closely monitor whether Shohei Ohtani will pitch in that. We'll end here. Okay, we'll end here. Just to clarify this, I think there's a 0% chance he pitches. Give me your percent guess.
Well, okay.
Because you got a little more like belief in this, I feel like.
Yeah, so kind of thinking about it, like it would just be too.
Oh, I think it's too complicated.
Right.
I don't think.
Well, here's the thing. I think right now,
there's technicalities.
Right, but here's the other part of this. He already hit 99. Like, why is he throwing 99 at this point?
Because he had a healthy offseason.
I don't know, man.
Like conspiracy brain appears.
Yeah, there is conspiracy brain. I mean, he can't. Well, here's the thing. It looks like he can.
I'm sure. Yes, he's
and if the
physically
moment
capable
right,
of
and
doing
then like
it.
if you look at the way the Japanese, I mean, are they really going to throw out Sugano in the
semifinal
right?
on the rest of Japan's roster?
Right? And so let's just say they have to empty their bullpen, in the semis, they get to the final. You know, right? Like, it's just that when you get to that moment, right? And I think this is the case with all these guys, right? It's no different than like with Yamamoto after Game 6 of the World Series, right? I think at that point when Dave Roberts told us that he is not available, I think he believed that at that moment, right? But then it's like, well, if the guy's there and he's saying he can pitch.
I understand the temptation, but there's too many logistical hurdles and potentially negative consequences. Now, maybe things are different if they get to like the day before the final and it's clear like there might be an opportunity for him.
You have to remember,
and he's been able to keep building up, you know, in the weeks he's been gone, and then he asked the Dodgers like, "Hey, but this feels like a Ohtani fan
but here's the
fiction.
thing, though. What you don't understand, though, is that this is a much bigger deal in Japan than the World Series, right? And like last year, it was, I mean, so much so, right, that again, when I'm not sure if I mentioned this yet, but when Yamamoto came out of the bullpen in Game 7. The Japanese media was like horrified by this, right? They're like, the WBC's next year. Like, how dare they risk injuring him in something as trivial as the World Series, right? Like, so, I mean, you got to understand there are different like valuation systems. I do think that like, you know, players come from Japan to here with this idea like we're going to conquer the world, and this is an actual like, you know, as much as it can be in baseball, like a global, like a legitimate global competition. So. I don't know. I just think that if the moment gets there, the manager, the Japanese manager is basically like a fan, you know. He came out, right?
Was that a compliment or?
No, it's like, it means that he can't, like, what I'm telling you is that he will not be able to, like, if Ohtani comes to him, he's like, I'm going to pitch. Like, what's the guy going to say?
Sure.
I mean, he was bragging to the media the other day. He's like, oh, look, Shohei called me. I mean, that's not the dynamic of a manager who can control the player. So I would say, look, I don't think it's going to happen. Well, because also keep in mind, they have to get to the final, I think. I don't think he's going to do this in like the quarterfinals. And look, they could end up like hitting the Dominican in the quarters if, right, the Dominican like loses to, you know, Venezuela.
I guess the only thing I'd say is, in Ohtani's whole time here, the Dodgers have gone out of their way to be vague, to leave doors open, to put decisions in his hands about all sorts of things. And they've been pretty declarative in this sense, or in this situation, that he's not pitching in the WBC. That suggests to me that they're that confident about it, but I guess we'll see. But I'm gonna say that's not gonna happen. But
I say it's like a 15 to 20% chance.
I'm hoping that it at least presents itself as an opportunity, so you can be in Miami raising your hand. Shohei, are you gonna pitch? And we'll see what he says then.
See what he says.
最後までご覧いただきありがとうございました。今回の動画についてどういう感想を持たれましたか？ぜひコメント欄で意見や感想をお聞かせください。チャンネル登録やグッドボタンを押していただけると励みになります。それでは次回の動画でお会いしましょう。